Hi everyone! In this video, I'll be showing you how and why I use color mixing charts. And quick disclaimer, I'll be showing you a variation of a color mixing chart that I like to use when I explore the possibilities of my palette. And there are many other ways to do it, and this is just one of them. I mainly make color mixing charts to see what I can do with the colors I have on my palette. This helps me avoid creating muddy colors, as well as learn more about how different pigments interact with each other. As you'll see, even two similar colors can produce completely different results when you start testing them out on a color mixing chart. Color mixing charts are also a great color mixing exercise. While of course there's a certain logic and rules to color theory, some things you just have to learn through experience. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. Color charts can help you see just how far a few pigments and some white paint can take you, and they can be made more complex and adjusted to fit your needs. I had a specific goal in mind for this color chart, which is why I chose the structure that I did. I started by creating a grid consisting of columns of 5 squares each, arranged in 2 rows on an A4 sheet of oil painting paper. It's also okay if you end up with extra columns, because you can always use them to test out more color combinations later, which is exactly what I ended up doing. Let me quickly explain why I'm doing this color chart in the first place. I recently watched this workshop by one of my favorite artists, Ruth Fitton, called The Creation of a Narrative Portrait, and I'll link it down at the description. And I was struck by how she uses and mixes color, especially skin tones. She has an incredible understanding of color, and her paintings have this balance of muted colors that never look dirty or dull. That's why I decided to see if I can approximate the effect she achieves using the palette she used in her workshop. In particular, I'm interested in how she uses purple for skin tones. But first, I had to see which of my 2 purple paints would work best for this purpose, which is why I had to test them out using a color chart. Once the grid is in place, I label each column at the top with either pure pigment or a mix of 2 or more pigments, and then in the top square, I lay in that pure color. Then I add progressively more white in the squares below to see how the value shifts from dark to light. That gives me a clear view of how each color and each color combination behave across the value range, which is particularly useful for skin tones because they usually have at least some white in them. I started by mapping in my 2 purple paints, Dioxazine Violet from Holbein and Permanent Red Violet from Cobra. Dioxazine Violet is a single pigment paint, and although Holbein brands it as DU294, it's actually PV23, which stands for Permanent Violet 23, also known as the name suggests, Dioxazine Violet. Permanent Red Violet also contains PV23, but in a mixture with PR122, also known as Quinacridone Magenta. That already means that it's going to be a warmer reddish color. To be honest, I don't usually have any purple pigments on my palette, so this exercise proved to be most educational. I recommend it to all beginner painters and to anyone who wants to expand their palette. Next, I mapped out some other colors Ruth used in her workshop demo: Yellow Ochre, Transparent Oxide Yellow, Alizarin Crimson, Raw Umber, and Ivory Black. Ruth used 2 yellows, but they behave quite differently. Yellow Ochre is more opaque and earthy, while Transparent Oxide Yellow is very transparent and vibrant. Together they give you more flexibility in mixing both muted and luminous skin tones. Alizarin Crimson is closer to magenta than purple, so I'm not including it in my comparison of the purples. It's just a cold red, and Ruth uses it in combination with the yellows to create a warm red color, which is very close to a Mars red or Terra Rosa. Raw umber is a perfect neutralizing pigment, and you've probably seen me use it for my value strings if you've watched any of my other videos. It's one of my favorite paints, and I keep a large tube of it. Ivory Black is actually the closest thing to a blue in this palette, which is clever because it keeps the palette harmonized without introducing a bright blue color necessarily. Once all the pure colors were laid in, I began testing my two purples with each of the other pigments. Right away you can see how neutralizing dioxazine violet is. It acts as a true purple in its combination with its complementary color, yellow ochre, and creates a grayish-brown pigment as a result. Permanent Red Violet, on the other hand, doesn't neutralize the yellows so well, and we end up with a warm red brick color, much like when you combine alizarin crimson with a yellow pigment. In combination with transparent oxide yellow, dioxazine violet gives a very nice, neutral, warm brown, and I can already see how this combination would work great for skin tones. Permanent Red Violet, on the other hand, creates a similar reddish tone as with yellow ochre, which makes it a little redundant since these can already be achieved with the other pigments on this palette. A combination of alizarin crimson and dioxazine violet produces a rich purple color. It's a solid hue that sits somewhere between the two pigments. However, when you mix permanent red violet and alizarin crimson, the result isn't too far off from pure alizarin crimson that melts into a bubblegum sort of color when combined with white. Again, that makes it seem like a repetitive addition to this palette. Mixed with raw umber, our darker purple produces a very neutral dark brown that creates nice warm grays when combined with white. It reminds me a little of Van Dyke Brown, and this could actually be a useful replacement for Ivory Black, since I almost never use it as a black in its pure form. I actually quite like the muted purple created by Permanent Red Violet and Raw Umber, but this wouldn't be a mixture that's particularly useful for skin tones. The blue in Ivory Black is slightly enhanced by Dioxazine Violet, and I can imagine using this mixture as a replacement for a pure blue pigment. Permanent Red Violet creates a nice muted purplish black color that reminds me of Vasari's shale, but at this point I've already made my choice. Dioxazine violet wins this round. So here's the full color mixing chart. I added a few more columns at the end to see how the yellows interact with alizarin crimson, and then compare that to Terra Rosa and transparent oxide red. And then I also tested how my chosen purple interacts with transparent oxide red, and that sealed the deal for me. Ruth, you've officially convinced me that there might be a place for purple on my palette after all. Thank you for watching this color mixing chart come together, and let me know down in the comments if you have any questions, and feel free to share your methods of making color mixing charts. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel for more art shenanigans, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!